1988, a year of celebration, cultural milestones, and incredible breakthroughs. It was a time when life felt a little more affordable and the world was full of possibilities. From cheap petrol and burgers to cutting edge technology, it was a year that shaped the future of the world. In Australia, the nation was buzzing with excitement as it celebrated its bicentenary, marking 200 years since the first fleet arrived. Cities were alive with parades, festivals, and events, while Brisbane's Expo 88 put Australia on the map, attracting millions of visitors and showcasing the country's growing global presence. The average weekly wage in Australia was around $450, and a loaf of bread would only set you back 70 cents. A litre of milk was around 60 cents, and for just $20 you could fill your car's tank with petrol. Movie tickets were a mere $7, making it easy to catch Crocodile Dundee 2, Die Hard, or Rain Man on the big screen without breaking the bank. And if you wanted to grab a meal after the show, you could get a burger for around $2.50. Beyond the daily essentials, technology was evolving at an exciting pace. 1988 saw the debut of the Next computer by Steve Jobs, a precursor to modern personal computing, while Australia was starting to embrace mobile phones, though they were still bulky and cost thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, the first transatlantic fiber optic cable was completed, revolutionizing global communication and laying the foundation for the internet as we know it today. The music scene in 1988 was buzzing, with Australian acts like In Excess and Kylie Minogue hitting the international charts. In Excess's Kick was a massive success, while Minogue's debut single I Should Be So Lucky was a pop anthem. Globally, George Michael's Faith and Tracy Chapman's Fast Car dominated the charts, and hip hop was starting to gain momentum with Public Enemy and NWA shaking up the genre. In relation to footy, 14 clubs competed for the ultimate prize. Hawthorn won the premiership for a seventh time after it defeated Melbourne by 96 points. The Hawks also won the pre-season night competition after beating Geelong by 3 points. Sydney Swan, Jared Healy took out the Brownlow medal, whilst Hawks spearhead Jason Dunstall won the Coleman. 1988 was the incredible year for world history, but how did it shape the future of your club? Let's take a look at the 1988 AFL trade period in the first of our video series looking at who exactly is the best club at trading and what are the best trades of the past 35 years. Okay, so let's look at the trades that occurred in 1988, of which there are only 8, with 2 of these trades including players that never played a game at their new clubs, or picks that resulted in players that never played a game for the club that selected them. If you haven't seen our video on how we've come up with the scoring system, we'll link that in the comments down below. We'll detail the weightings we're using to determine these scores. So, aside from the 2 trades resulting in non-scores between Sydney and North Melbourne and Sydney and Hawthorn, the 6th ranked trade of the 1988 season involved a dual premiership and best and fairest winning bomber, Glenn Hawker. An Essendon great, Hawker moved to Carlton in 1988 in a trade that involved pick 12 and 26. Hawker would play 27 games for the Blues, earning 1 Brownlow vote, leaving Carlton with a final score of 28. In return, Essendon drafted Brad Fox with pick 12, who would go on to play 17 games for the Bombers, and David Regan at pick 26. Regan would not play a game, leaving Essendon with a final score of 17. Comparing final scores, we can see that Carlton won this trade by 11 points. The 5th ranked trade of 1988 saw a tall eagle traded to Brisbane for pick 2. Ruckman Alex Ischenko, fondly named Russian, was traded by West Coast to Brisbane in exchange for pick 2 in the national draft. Ischenko would go on to play 42 games for the Bears, earning 4 Brownlow votes, leaving Brisbane with a total of 46 points. West Coast used their prized number 2 pick in the draft to select Todd Bremen, who would play only 23 games for the Eagles, before being traded to Richmond at the end of the 1991 season. The Bremen trade left West Coast with a total of 23 points, meaning Brisbane won this trade by 23 points. Brisbane were also involved in the 4th ranked trade of 1988, where they traded pick 86 to the Bulldogs in exchange for Craig Somerville. Somerville would unfortunately not play a game for the Bears, whilst Ben Sexton would go on to play in 39 games for the Dogs, meaning that the Dogs won this trade by 39 points. The 3rd ranked trade involved 4 players and the number 1 draft pick. Imagine a trade period these days where both the number 1 and number 2 draft pick were traded in the same year. Trade radio would go off, the Big Footy website would go down, and SEN's phone lines would blow up. Hawthorn managed to convince the Saints to give up the number 1 pick in the draft, but they had to give up 3 players to do so. Paul Harding, Peter Russo, and Robert Handley were all shipped off to Moorabbin in order to get this trade done. Harding would play 62 games for the Saints, earning 14 Brownlow votes, resulting in a score of 76 points. Russo would play 33 games, whilst Handley would only play 4. When we tally up the St Kilda side of the trade, we end up with a score of 113. So who did the Hawks trade all these players for? Alex McDonald is who. McDonald would play 46 games for Hawthorn, earning a solitary Brownlow vote in his final year at the club before being traded to Collingwood in 1995. This means that St Kilda won this trade by 66 points. So in total, picks 1 and 2 in the 1988 draft went on to score a total of 70 points for the teams that traded for those picks. Not that we are focusing on the draft picks in this series, but leaving players like Leon Cameron, Anthony Stevens, Adrian Fletcher, and Michael Long on the table probably wasn't the best draft results for those clubs. Brisbane and West Coast were back again in a trade that is the second ranked trade of 1988. Mark Zanotti was traded to Brisbane from West Coast in exchange for pick 44 in the national draft. Zanotti would go on to play 64 games for Brisbane, earning 12 Brownlow votes before being delisted at the end of 92. This would leave Brisbane Bears with a score of 76. In exchange for Zanotti, West Coast selected Scott Williamson. Williamson would not pull on an Eagles jumper for the senior side, leaving West Coast with a total of 0 points, resulting in a sizable win for the Bears. If 1988 is anything to go by, maybe West Coast should have looked elsewhere for a team to trade with rather than the Queensland-based Bears. That leaves us with just the number one trade of the 1988 season to cover, and boy was it a good one for the Cats. Originally from Camberdown, Ken Hinkley didn't like his time in Melbourne and walked out in Fitzroy after only 11 games in 1988, asking for a clearance to Geelong. Ken Hinkley stood out of football for the rest of the 1988 season before being traded to Geelong in the 1989 season. A halfback flanker in the 1991 and 1992 All-Australian teams, Ken Hinkley also won the Kaji Greaves medal as Geelong's best and fairest player in the 1992 AFL season. Same year, he finished third at the Brownlow medal count behind winner Scott Wynd and Hawthorn's Jason Dunstall. He appeared in 12 finals with Geelong, including the 1992, 1994 and 1995 grand final losses. Hinkley was traded to Geelong in exchange for pick 48 in the national draft. The end result as far as Geelong are concerned is that this trade scored a whopping 289 points. Fitzroy selected Scott Jordan at pick 48, who played a grand total of 0 games, meaning Geelong won this trade by 289 points. So at the end of the 1988 trade period, Geelong are the ladder leaders as a result of the Hinkley trade. St Kilda, who traded away pick 1 but still managed to win the trade, is second, Brisbane in third after their 2 trades with West Coast. Bulldogs are next on the list, followed by Carlton. North and Sydney are 6th and 7th, following trades that didn't register a score, followed by Essendon and Hawthorn. West Coast with the Roys in last place. So there you have it, a trade period that would include trades for pick 1 and 2, with both teams losing out on those trades, and a kid from Camberdown who would go on to become a Geelong legend traded for a player who never played a game. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to ensure that you don't miss our next video in this series. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.